Now let's move on to the area of patents and Fairbury citizens who have received U.S. patents. Patents are the exclusive right to an invention for roughly 17 years. You legally file a patent and the patent office reviews it, and if it's approved, then you receive the patent with the exclusive rights. Some of the most interesting patents I've found searching for those belonging to Fairbury citizens include these three here. The first one is a doll, actually, which is rather unusual to patent a doll design, from 1918 in the upper left by Burt Randolph Maxwell. I wish I could go back in time and say, Burt, what were you thinking? What child, boy or girl, would want to get up Christmas morning and look in their stocking and find a doll looking like this? When I brought this up at the museum speech, somebody pointed out, yes, Dale, but cabbage dolls were pretty ugly too, and they turned out to be pretty popular. So I don't know what Burt was thinking when he patented his doll in 1918. The upper right is a pretty neat flower stand. It's a 1909 carnation stand. It was done by Mr. Pittman and Mr. Kring in 1909. The bottom middle one is was patented in 1975. It was titled A Mobile Sit-On Crane by Argyll Luttrell. I'd really like to have one of these when I was a kid out in the sandbox. These would be a lot of fun. William Stackpole was quite an interesting character that lived in Fairbury. He spent some time with dredging the Illinois River, and even came up with a patent back in 1874 for a dredging apparatus. As you can see in the picture, it looks like you attached it to the end of a boat, and then you could dredge out the river. His house is still standing. It's one of the oldest houses in Fairbury. It's hard to see in the picture. It's on the southeast corner of Marsh Park. It's the William Stackpole house. It was put together with handmade nails like spikes, and it was intended to be cyclone proof. William Stackpole was one of Fairbury's earliest residents. As I said, he had an interest in rivers and navigation, but the patent didn't really do him any good because in the end he eventually went broke. Now here's a quiz question about Fairbury men and patents. What Fairbury man invented and got patents for these three items? Corn planter check row attachment in the upper left, in the upper right a razor blade design, and in the bottom one of the earliest typewriter designs. The man who invented those things was Henry Judson Odell. He lived from 1855 until 1919. He lived in Fairbury from about age 7 until about 26. He invented the corn planter attachment while he was still living in Fairbury. He then moved to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and invented one of the earliest typewriters. He then moved to Glendora, California, and invented a razor blade, when I can tell mostly a razor blade for women. His body's actually buried out in California in Glendora, but there is a Fairbury tombstone as shown here. It's over on the west side of the cemetery in Fairbury. After Mr. Odell moved to California, which is where he lived the last part of his life and where he died, he made national headlines. It was kind of a human interest story that was picked up by all the newspapers. There was an attractive young woman who applied for a job at his company, razor blade company out in California, and she actually had to go back for 3 different interviews. And finally, Mr. Odell told her that her hands were just too soft for working in the factory, and the only way she could get a job with his company was to marry him. Interesting story. Now there's some minor details. Mr. Judson, as far as I can tell, was still married at this point. And if you research it farther, you cannot find a record for the new marriage. And the young lady actually moved back with her parents on a farm, I think, in Oklahoma, and shows up in the census as not being married a few years after this. So, interesting story, but probably not true. Since 1971 up until 2014, there's been 69 patents issued to Fairbury citizens. I've kind of categorized them here from most patents to least patents order, top to bottom. Dana Calderon has 35 patents assigned to Caterpillar with diesel fuel injection. Dana lived in Fairbury and Timber Ridge quite a few years. His girls played volleyball. A few years ago he moved to Secor. Myself, Dale Maley, I have 16 patents. All those were assigned to my employer, Caterpillar Inc. They're all also diesel fuel injection related. Norman Rittenhouse has 7 patents. He recently passed away. Most of those have to do with electrical designs and electric motors. Robert Daniels has 3 patents. Most of those involve automotive type patents. Don Slagle has, I'll read the names of the people with 1 patent and what they got them for. Don Slagle, a tube conveyor. Lloyd Metz, an adjustable end gate assembly for a pickup truck. Argo Luttrell, that mobile sit-on toy crane. Howard Alm, a variable voltage divider. Ralph Hoffman, a sink clamp. Christian Hitty, combination container and spreadage package for particulate material. Lyle Honiger, a movable animal house, and he jointly got a patent with Joseph Stevenson on a movable animal house.